Barrett, I hope you're doing well, and is your seat hot like the rest of the SEC?
No, not as hot as some other people in the SEC, but yeah, I heard the music coming back. Sad news about Tom Petty today.
No doubt, man. It's been a crazy Monday, man. It's just
yes, it has.
Yeah. So hopefully we can get to Tuesday, but we try to serve as that outlet of sports that needs to be. It gets our mind away from the real life, but. Barrett, let me go into a couple of different conversations. Let me start with here in Tuscaloosa, 66-3, dominating performance over the Ole Miss Rebels.
Yeah, it was dominating is the right word. That's a I wouldn't say good Ole Miss offense because the last couple of games they actually have a longer touchdown-less streak than Tennessee right now, which is not great. But what Alabama did was definitely emphatic. And, honestly, I think it might have been too emphatic. And I think that's why Nick Saban got upset in the post-game press conferences, because he literally has no way to sell his team about fighting off complacency right now. Like, of course they're going to be a little complacent after, he can't sell, you guys aren't paying close enough attention to teams you should beat. You aren't paying enough attention to 4-touchdown underdogs. I think they're paying plenty of attention to it, and that actually might bother Saban more than anything else.
Yeah, because he walks in. I mean, he's very salty, Barrett. I mean, he's a guy that's. Even like from the opening comments, kind of sassy, and he was critiquing media guys the way they hold the mic post game. He's just. And then he was asked about a couple of just to comment about 66 points. Most coaches are happy, and he's talking about different things they did wrong and just going through the critique. I mean, it's crazy to hear Nick Saban. I mean, he found a way to go half empty rather than half full.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you look at what Alabama's done through the first 5 weeks of the season. They've looked really, they've looked fantastic. And the problem I think is that through 5 weeks of the season, I think they expected to be tested a little bit more. I mean, you and I were both at the Florida State game, even though that was close-ish. It never felt like Alabama was in jeopardy, and they have not been in jeopardy all year long. And I think that was, and Nick Saban knows it. Like that's the reason they lost the national championship game last year, is because they never got a situation outside of the Ole Miss game where they were stressed or tested at all. And they want that. They feel like they need to see that because they want to see if Jalen Hurts can go win a football game with his arm or go make a big play and with Brian Dable, a new offensive coordinator, coincides. Like, they want to see that. They don't want to be in a situation last year where they just aren't afforded the opportunity to face a little adversity on the field, so to speak.
Let me ask you about the hit from Dawson Knox onto Sean Hand. What were your thoughts?
I initially thought extremely dirty, definitely violent, definitely should be out of the game. That kind of hit should be out of the game. Now, rules experts will say that it was legal, and I think that's the problem, because if it's legal, I think we can all look at that and say, okay, that's a pretty violent cut block that can't exist. But then, okay, well, if you're going to make that illegal, what do you do with triple option teams? Because that's pretty much all that they do. Do you say, okay, you can't have, a running start and cut somebody? Because then, maybe theoretically, offensive linemen in a triple option scheme would not be committing penalties. But then how do you legislate that in real time? Whose job is it to watch it? So it's a loaded question. I initially thought dirty. It certainly it had intent. We all know what the intent was. Technically not illegal, but probably should be.
Barrett, if this team, and I'm talking about Ole Miss, is this bad now, what will the NCAA sanctions do to this program?
Oh, devastated. I mean, they'll devastate it because you would assume now. Look, I thought Ole Miss would be better than this because I did think that that offense would have a little bit more success, and they just don't right now. They're just not cohesive. And they're going to pack it in. At this point, that's a demoralizing loss. They're just going to pack it in. If you add another year of a bowl ban to it, then all these guys can transfer, and a lot of them will. And so it's going to be a very, very long process if they get another year of a bowl ban tacked on to this year. And that's why I think they need to go find a coach who is willing to go through a ton of struggles and build something and be patient with him. A lot like Baylor did with Matt Rule. Baylor's 0-5 right now, and they're better. They should be better than that. But Matt Rule is changing the identity of the program, changing the team. They're looking at that kind of very slow rebuild in Oxford, in a division that, while not great, you never know what it's going to look like 2 years from now if LSU finally gets right, if Texas A&M finally gets right. Alabama obviously is right. Auburn looks like it's right. So, it's going to be tough for Ole Miss to be competitive.
Let me go to Texas A&M, and then we're going to work our way back to the SEC hot seats. What do you see in this game with Alabama?
I wouldn't say, I don't know about dangerous, but intriguing maybe, because I think a lot of people just watch the UCLA game and then just wrote Texas A&M off. And they've actually become a really interesting, entertaining team the last, 4 games. They're very aggressive defensively. I mean, they will play high risk, high reward defense. And so there will be some pressure on Jalen Hurts. I mean, when he drops back, there's going to be a bunch of creative blitzes coming at him. So, that part's interesting to me. And then offensively, they've developed into a pretty good rushing attack. Second in the SEC in rushing. Kellen Mond is making very smart decisions with how they operate, more of a zone read, Johnny Manziel type offense. Now, can they do that against Alabama consistently? Probably not. But can they do it to enough to cover 26.5, 27 points? Maybe. It's not anywhere close to the pushover Ole Miss was, in my opinion. I think Texas A&M is a vastly better team than Ole Miss is.
Barrett, let's go to Knoxville. When you look at Butch Jones, the days have to be numbered, and if so, when? Yeah,
that's the question. It's not if, it's when. And it should have been yesterday, to be honest with you. Because that team and that program, they had a decommitment today. They had a player transfer today. They had no fight. They have no identity. That feels to me very much like Auburn 2012, when just mass paranoia, just no trust, no fluidity, no identity. That's what Tennessee is right now. And so it's not an if, it's a win. I think that if John Curry is smart, which I don't know how many ADs have thought about this yet and have thought about their plan, but they need to make a move now, because if they wait until they lose to Vanderbilt, which they will, and fire him after rivalry weekend, you're basically giving yourself 2 weeks to hire a coach, hire a staff, and retain a vast majority of your recruiting class, because most of these coaches think 60 to 90% of these kids are going to sign in December in the new early signing period. And so that means the coaching silly season is going to be full of deceit, full of posturing, full of lies. And if you're Tennessee, you actually have a luxury right now. You actually have the ability, instead of only having 5 or 6, contingency plans for hiring a head coach, you could quite literally have 25 or 30 that you are somewhat okay with on various different levels. And most other schools are not going to have that opportunity in a very condensed, very unique situation with the early signing period.
And, wow. So let me go to Coach O here just for a couple of minutes. What's your thoughts when you look at Coach O and what happened there with Neil Brown taking the Trojans from Troy down to Baton Rouge?
Well, I think he has he's lost his way. Maybe he never had a way, but he doesn't understand what it is to be a head coach. At Ole Miss, he was very hands-on. He didn't let his coordinators coordinate and was very aggressive and had his players practice too much. He said all offseason he learned from his lessons. Well, I think through the first 4 games of the season, he maybe didn't trust that enough and maybe swung the pendulum too far into the I'm going to be a CEO sort of role. And so last week he had a much more hands-on approach to an offense that he really has no business being involved in, and it suffered. So, I'm not ready to write him off yet. I still think it's okay to be coordinator dependent as long as you manage a program the way it needs to be managed. And right now, he's not doing that part well at all. That's not to say he can't fix it, but he's also not getting fired this year either. $12 million is $12 million. That's way different at LSU based on their financial situation than it is in Knoxville with Bush's 9. Plus, if Joe Alleva is forced to fire at Orgeron, Joe Alleva is going to get fired too. So the process needs to be Joe Alleva fired first, new AD get hired, new AD assess situation. Then we can legitimately talk about Coach O going. But until Joe Alleva's fired, it's just not going to happen.
What's your thoughts on the Auburn Tigers?
They're really good. I mean, you put Georgia and Auburn 2A, 2B in the SEC. And, pick which one you want as A, pick which one you want as B, but it doesn't really matter. They're both really good. Offensively, they have found exactly what they need in terms of blending a run-based offense with a little bit more of an air raid. Jarrett Stidham is consistently hitting his targets downfield. The offensive line has literally done a 180 in Clemson. I mean, he didn't even get pressured against Mississippi State. That's a pretty good Mississippi State defensive front. And defensively, they're going to keep you in every game. So they're a really good team. I think right now, Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, those 3 teams are the only 3 college football playoff caliber teams that the SEC boasts, but they're all 3 damn good football teams.